Hello, welcome to The Conversation on New Central Television. This is a show where we bring you all the regular political updates and happenings around the continent. I'm Gbenga Aborowa.
And I am Rita Omodia. Once again, we wish all Gambians a happy Independence anniversary as we celebrate 57 years today. Now, today on the program, we will be discussing the European Union-African Union meeting held in Brussels with the hope of improving the current relationship between both continents. We will also be looking at the corruption trial in Mozambique, where former President Armando Guebuza has given evidence in which his son is an accused. These are two very important topics that we have today, Gbenga.
Very important indeed. And I'm just shocked at the rot that happened in Mozambique, the scale of it. And I'm happy we'll have someone from Mozambique that will discuss all of that. And then the European African Union Summit ends today. Let's hope the president...
A lot of expectations.
Come back with a lot of goodie bags. Mr. Collins Nweke is a standby to tell us how that one will go.
And that's one of our guests for today. So let's begin with the EU-AU meeting, which started yesterday in Brussels. It is a sixth summit, and it is an attempt to improve relations after disputes over coronavirus vaccines, illegal migration, and the role of Russian mercenaries in Africa. The EU Council said the summit will present a unique opportunity to lay good foundations for a renewed and deeper AU-EU partnership. But for many Africans, the summit or the presence of the EU on the continent is no labor of love, as it seeks rewards in the resource-rich continent and seeks proxy control over them.
Europeans will aim to convince their African counterparts that they are their most reliable partner in the face of tough competition on the continent from Russia and China. But it's expected that African leaders will tell them where the shoe actually pinches them. We have joining us live from Brussels in Belgium to discuss the AU-EU summit, Mr. Collins Nweke, a global affairs analyst. Thank you very much for joining us as always, Collins.
Thank you, Gbenga and Rita. It's nice to be with you again.
Thank you so much.
Heralded as a partnership of equals when the EU-Africa partnership was launched in 2007, how has this relationship developed over the years?
Well, the relationship has rather not departed from the colonial mentality that has actually characterized, such partnership. I think right now it has become very clear on both sides that, such a relationship of donor-recipient dynamics is no longer sustainable. One of the reasons being, of course, what you mentioned in the intro, talking about the fact that Europe is facing a stiff competition when it comes to partnership with Africa. You have China on the one hand, you have Russia coming in from the other part of the globe, and closer to Europe here, you also have Turkey, that has been making a very, very significant inroad, being very, very pragmatic, giving them, their back to, some of the cliches, some of the old school practices. Now, the only one that appears in this partnership not to be catching up is Africa, because the question then is, what is so special about this bride called Africa that every suitor wants it? Now, those suitors know why they want Africa as a beautiful bride, but Africa itself appears not to understand how beautiful it is. And so that is the challenge facing them, because the moment they realize, that they've got a lot to offer, and that is why people are coming to them. They're not coming to them because, they want to help them. They want to give them a handout. They are coming to them because there is money to make. There is return on investment. It offers a new frontier for businesses, considering that, the European economy is saturating. The population is growing very, very seriously. Whereas in Africa, you have a pool of young, educated, talented, and aspirational people who are ready to, go into the world and do wonderful things. So African leaders need to understand that they stand a very strong negotiating position, and from that position, they should depart and begin to negotiate good deals for Africa.
Okay, now talking about negotiation position and, of course, the one-sidedness relationship between the EU and the AU, we also know that the president of France wants to reshape relations between Europe and Africa. Do you think this February AU summit will improve the relationship, also judging from the fact that Mali has asked French troops to leave the country immediately?
Well, there is no alternative to strengthening and reinvigorating the relationship between Africa and Europe. Now that you mentioned the French President Emmanuel Macron, I will use his exact word. He said that the Africa-Europe relationship is a tired relationship. Those are his words. He probably realizes that one of the things that has put very strong strain on the relationship, that has gotten it so tired, almost to the point of comatose, is some of the legacies, the colonial legacies that they left behind. Take, for example, the issue of finance and how much the economy of some African countries that were former colonies of France are so very much dependent on the French economy, to the point that they dictate when to draw and when not to draw, all the way from Paris. So you see, these are the things that they are realizing now, and knowing that it is inevitable to reinvigorate and strengthen that relationship. Otherwise, they stand to lose and lose in a big way.
Now, Collins, Europe's relationship with Africa has been governed in the past by a number of international agreements. Have these agreements delivered the expected results that we've had in the past?
No, they haven't quite delivered the result. And it's not just Collins Nweke telling you, you just need to look around you. When you look around you, what you see is an unemployment or underemployment rate that is hitting the sky, especially amongst young people. You are seeing deepening levels of corruption amongst African leaders, encouraged tacitly, sometimes openly, by the friends and allies out here in the West, where they come to keep their loot. When you look around, you will see the vaccine inequity, where Africa was left high and dry, not realizing that until everyone is vaccinated, no one is vaccinated. When you look around, you will see situations like how travel ban was imposed unjudiciously on Africa, while others could do as they will, actually helping to strangle the African economy even more. You'll also see how they ignored the opportunities, the lessons to be learned from Africa on how to vaccinate and actually how to put COVID pandemic under control, because Africa, notably Senegal and Nigeria, took quite a bit of lesson from the management of Ebola crisis. So they made it look as if Africa has nothing to offer. So all of these talk shops are probably ending with this system EU-AU summit, because, and I mean, this is part of the wish list. They said, so we have to see how it pans out. They told us that there is going to be a very strong follow-up mechanism. That's all we know. The follow-up mechanisms, the actual content of that follow-up mechanism in terms of how to, actually monitor the deliverables of the agreements they are going to reach is still very scanty. But one can expect that the diplomats, the African diplomats in Brussels and other parts of Europe would have a very, very important role to play in that, follow-up mechanism. And so all hopes will be centered on that follow-up mechanism, because That is, in my view, one way that, it will no longer be just talk shop, but actions and deliverables coming out of, the summit.
All right, Collins, negotiation is top on the agenda. We have AU and EU member countries, and for each country, they all have their own peculiarities. So do you think Africa leaders should speak with one voice, or probably should each country assess its relations with the EU through its own ideological lens?
I think it's going to be a combination of both, in the sense that the purpose of the AU, African Union, and the purpose of the EU, European Union, is actually to form a collectivity on a broad range of policy areas that are harmonized at the intercontinental level. Now, that is not to say that different countries do not have their different idiosyncrasies. Yes, they do. And those have got to be taken into consideration. But the ground rule has got to be set and monitored from the top, which is either the head of the AU or the head of the European Union. But yes, indeed, it is up to the individual countries to do what is called needs analysis and needs assessment. What do we need? What is our objective? What is our goal? Where is our vision targeted? The AU is working on Agenda 2063. Now, Nigeria has had, the Vision 2020, which expired 2 years ago. I'm not sure they came close to the objectives that was set forth. We are probably going to see Vision 2030 and so on and so forth. So you establish your strategic vision as a country that now fits into the either the AU or the EU, and then you take it from there.
Okay, thank you very much, Collins. Now, a recurring theme in the discourse of most political leaders, African political leaders, and even economic decision makers at national, regional, and continental level is the issue of the structural transformation of Africa. A lot of African countries are approaching 60 years post-independence, and why is Africa still struggling to transform itself?
Africa is struggling to transform itself because it hasn't quite, the leaders haven't quite been purposeful enough. We have had situations of one step forward, two steps backwards. Military coup is still very much rife, and anybody jubilating that the military have seized power is doing so definitely out of desperation, because they haven't known anything better. When they have lost all hope, somebody comes in and say, yes, I'm going to give you the life you desire. They embrace it. But we have seen from lessons of history that they truncate development and they set countries back many years, even decades, in their developmental trajectory. So those are, part of the things. But of course, the insincerity of the international partners of Africa has been part of the problem as well. And I make bold to call out a number of European countries that have actually taken advantage of the vulnerability of Africa and their leaders to siphon resources from Africa or tilt relationships in such a way that it benefits them and leaves Africa high and dry. Now, with a new crop of leaders, especially the civil society organizations, and very, very importantly, a crop of young Africans that actually know what they want, that have converged in the global village that the world has become, with their counterparts, in other parts of the world. All of those dynamics actually means that the change that is desirable for Africa is inevitable, and it is the imperative of this time to see it happen. And so one has lots of expectations, for summits of this nature, although the hope that things will immediately begin to change is very, very thin. We can expect then that, talking as we are having in this conversation might, serve the purpose of rejigging the situation and getting our leaders to be a bit more purposeful.
Still looking at the way forward, because a lot of expectations high for this AU-EU summit. In your own perspective, your own view, what do you think should be done to build a more political and strategic partnership between both continents?
Well, first and foremost, a summit of this nature, actually helps to set the framework for such a political and economic, partnership that will set the two continents at a path of mutual benefit. Now, if you look at the outline of the summit, unlike the last one that took place in 2017 in Ivory Coast, that had 4 thematic sessions, this particular one has 7 thematic sessions, and that makes it one of, or if not the most robust summit so far. Now, if you look at the topics that they are dealing with, digital transformation, e-commerce, climate change, and the rest of them, of course, looking at health, stability and security, you will see that it is actually meant to rejig the relationship and, make it a bit more futuristic than in previous occasions where it had been a bit more one-sided in terms of, the partners in Europe taking away all the loot, all the spoils, and then Africa being left high and dry. So yes, the impetus is going to be set here, but then it is up to the different partners, Africa on one hand and Europe on the other hand, to drive it to purposeful conclusion.
Now, Collins, Africa has suffered from the twin blows of slavery and colonization. How do we break away from this painful history and from the paternalistic and nanny diplomacy that we see existing between Europe and Africa to to focus more on economic emancipation with dignity?
Very good question, Gbenga. As a matter of fact, it has got to start with Africa realizing why they have become, or it has become a bride that everyone wants. I alluded to that initially when I talked about Africa actually understanding that it brings quite a number of goodies to the table. It is a strong partner, and so it has got to assume that strong negotiating position. Now, it also has got to be a little bit more strategic in terms of not always getting into the fray with Europe when they are being used as a political tool. And I will give you an example with the issue of migration. Now, when they talk about Africa-Europe migration, the focus is always on illegal migration. And that is ironical. It is ironical because out here in Europe, 96% of Africans are legal migrants. And they do not even form the largest block of migrants here. No, they don't. You have, migrants from the Eastern Bloc, the former Balkan countries, Russia, and the rest of them. They dominate here. Their new, European partners, for example, Poland, due to the disparity in economic performances and all of that, they all migrated to this part. So Africans are actually the minority, and illegal migration here represents about 3 to 4%. So, but the way they talk about it, it is like every African you meet in the European streets is an illegal migrant, whereas these people are contributing tremendously to the economy, to cultural rejuvenation.
So what do we need to do to change that narrative?
Well,
it's very important information you just put out now.
Begin first with the changing of the perception. I mean, look at, for example, the speech given by President Buhari of Nigeria today. For Christ's sake, the man hammered on migration, actually buying in totally to the narrative that Europe has given, even when Europe is now realizing that it is no longer, fashionable to do that. They are stepping away from that. Now, it is one of the major African leaders that is promoting such a narrative. So we've got to start from that change of perspective. Yeah? Secondly, we need to also negotiate better deals in terms of, and I will leave it at one example, encouraging manufacturing in Africa as part of the deal that is going to be made. Because in the past, what we had seen is a situation where funds are earmarked, but ultimately it is the European expats that are, or expatriates, that are brought in to do those jobs, and part of them are then brought back to Europe to be, for production purposes.
So they gain from the entire value chain, of production.
Exactly. So they could start, from the basics, encourage manufacturing in Africa. That creates job, and that reduces the level of, crime. Because, I mean, when young people don't have something to do, the tendency for them to take to crime, is higher. So keep them busy by encouraging manufacturing for a start. And these are just basic, example. And then one of the encouraging signs that this sixth summit might be different from the rest is the fact that they are looking to use public funds to actually facilitate private sector participation in the economy, whereby, for example, troublesome issues like exchange rate disparity that creates a lot of risks in doing business will be arrested one way or the other out of the 170 billion dollars that has been earmarked for financing decisions that will be made out of this particular summit. So there is, there are expectations. The hopes are tiny, but there are signs that things will begin to change, because the format of this summit, I must admit, is different from the previous one. Because rather than long speeches and all of that, there is more a situation where the heads of state of Africa and their delegations are actually having a kind of a speed date with their counterparts here, directly negotiating in the presence of the different ambassadors, who would then be part of following or by the time they return to their respective capitals.
All right, thank you so much, Collins. And talking about investment, we also know that President von der Leyen talked about investment, talked about the global healthway. She also talked about, global gateway. She also talked about investing in production facilities, talking about South Africa and the mRNA production facilities. So thank you so much, Collins Nweke, for sharing so much insights on the AU-EU summit, and our fingers across, and a lot of expectations on high for this.
Thank you for having me, always.
Okay, if you're just watching News Central, this is The Conversation. We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be switching gears and moving to Mozambique, where there's a lot happening there politically. You're welcome back to the conversation. If you're just joining us, we're switching gears from the African Union Summit and the European Union Summit in Brussels to talk about latest developments in Mozambique. Now, let's talk about how Mozambique's former president, Armando Guebuza, has given evidence in a huge corruption trial in which his son is an accused. Mr. Guebuza, who is the first former president to take the witness stand in a court case in the country, defended his government's decision to secretly borrow $2 billion to finance a fishing fleet.
Now, in this scandal, a portion of the funds were unaccounted for, with one of Mozambique's contractors later found to have secretly arranged significant kickbacks worth at least $137 million, including $50 million for bankers at Credit Suisse, meant to secure more favorable deals on the loans, according to regulators. His son Ndambi is one of 19 defendants on trial, accused of diverting $500 million from the loan, which was not declared to the Mozambican parliament. Ndambi says has been in detention since February 2019 and denied charges that he took bribes to persuade his father to approve the maritime deal and facilitate the secret loans.
Now, to discuss this, we have Martin Macondzo, who is a political analyst, and we also have Fernando Gonçalves joining in from Mozambique. A warm welcome to you, gentlemen.
Well, thank you everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, be part of this program to discuss this matter.
Thank you. We also have Fernando Gonçalves, journalist, joining us subsequently on the program to discuss this issue in Mozambique. So now, looking at the issue, Martin, let's start from this. A former World Bank anti-corruption expert, Richard Nweke, has described this case as the most egregious corruption offense of the past. And now, can you explain to us how important this case is?
Well, this case is very, very important, and allow me to say that it's in our history as a country is one of the biggest and most important case that we have now on trial. And this because of the nature of the situation. I mean, we're talking about the secret loan that was made on the name of the people from Mozambique, which was at the same time illegal in a certain level. So now, after 6, 7 years, having a chance to have this in the court of law, it's really amazing, and it's at the same time a relief for the population of Mozambique to have this chance and have the opportunity to understand how everything went down and with all the details, and seeing every single person that was responsible for this situation being judged and having the opportunity to listen to them and have a better understanding.
Thank you, Martin. Now let's listen to what the former president, Armando Guebuza, had to say about this case.
De procurar recursos foi tomada por mim, delegando no comando operativo, através de seus líderes. Nós funcionávamos com órgãos estruturados. Eles apresentavam uma proposta, era discutida e, quando aprovada, então podia continuar-se a trabalhar nela para a sua execução. Mas normalmente nestes casos quem responde sempre é o chefe, né? Que está a presidir a reunião. Neste caso, o comando operativo tem o seu chefe, tinha o seu chefe, que era o ministro de Defesa Nacional. Contactei com as pessoas para encorajá-las a trabalhar. Agora, o resto que aconteceu, não sei o que fiz. Talvez tenham sido essas pessoas. Tinha naturalmente à frente o ministro de Defesa, o ministro do Interior, o diretor-geral da CIS, alguns de seus quadros.
Now, Martin, you heard Mr. Gebuza there. He defended his actions and said he had acted because of a threat to national security. He then told the court not to dwell on defense matters as it was not the remit. Are his actions really justified? And what do you make of his response?
Well, currently his justification is related to the national security situation, but in practice, we don't really see that. This project wasn't brought to the parliament, for instance, to have a discussion, which is parliament is the representation of the people, which means that the people, neither the deputies didn't have the chance to understand what was really happening and what was this project about. And we're only having this information now, So it's quite complicated to come with this justification now that this was for a matter of a national security, when in reality we don't really see that now. We don't really
Martin,
see.
sorry to interrupt you, Martin. Is there any correlation? Is there something we don't know? Is there a connection between fishing fleet and national security? And why is he mentioning the defense minister?
Exactly, and that's the other problem, because it started has a national security. The project initially was related to a national security, and then somehow it changed to a perspective of a company that works with fish. And this is something that is not well explained yet. I mean, even for us here in Mozambique, we don't quite understand how this shift happened and why did it happen. And even the company, when the shift happened, the company still were not working the way that they should be working, So the question that is the question that is brought up now is, where did the money went? Because if it didn't go for the national security and neither for the fishing company, so where's the money? Where was the investment made? And that's the discussion that essentially is we're having now, because we don't really understand that.
Okay, Martin, 19 former government officials, including Gebuza's son Ndami, for which Gebuza was brought in for, and those from the highest reaches of power are on trial. And Ndami has continuously denied the charges. To you, are you comfortable with the corruption trial going on so far?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear us, Martin?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we're looking at the corruption trial, how it has been going so far. We know of Gebuza's son Ndami. He has so far denied all the charges that have been leveled against him. But we also know that 19 former government officials are also on trial. So to you, are you comfortable with the corruption trials going on so far, or do you see some lapses in the trial?
Well, I'm comfortable, and I believe that most of our population is comfortable seeing all these people in trial right now, because they were all involved in somehow, directly or not, they were involved in it. So it's quite important to for them to be there, for them to be in trial, for them to be judged, in order for us to have a better understanding of what happened. And if they were on this illegally, of course they're supposed to be arrested as they were, But this is mostly for a social perspective, because now the people won't be that much anxious about this matter, because now we are getting slowly but surely we're getting a better understanding of the facts, and that's the most important. So I believe that most of us are now comfortable seeing this every day and having details about this trial every day.
Now, Martin, Mozambique is one of the world's poorest countries, unfortunately, and some analysts have said this corruption scandal has affected the efforts to boost its economy. Now, if you look at it this way, do you think Mozambique would be able to repatriate the stolen funds even if the accused are found guilty?
Well, yes, I do believe. I mean, this is a matter of Mozambique as a country, government itself be able to restructure our financial economic plan in the long term. because we lack this planning in the long term, economically, that is. For instance, Mozambique is quite rich in agriculture, but we don't really have that much investment on it. So if we're able to invest more on it, that would allow us to prosper even more. With that being said, what I'm trying to say is that Mozambique needs to be able to move forward for itself, instead of being a country that it is always seeking for help of the others, Western countries and whatnot.
Now, Martin, there is currently an insurgency going on in the Cabo Delgado province of Mozambique in the north. And lots of those grievances, when you ask the insurgents, they always point to widespread corruption. This is a landmark case. A former president is being put on trial. Do you think this would add to President Filipe Nyusi's fight against corruption? And how has the battle against corruption been in his first term in office?
Hello?
Yes, Martin, I said the insurgents in Cabo Delgado have always used corruption as one of the grievances. They said that's why they picked up arms. My question to you is this. We also have a landmark case where former president is standing trial for corruption. And would this help President Filipe Nyusi's standings as a champion against corruption? And how has he dealt with corruption in his first term in office? Okay,
it's a very serious issue. I mean, the president is involved in the corruption scandal. We have the former president also involved in the corruption scandal. I mean, there's a lot to do in Mozambique. And as I said earlier on, it's one of the world's poorest countries. It's a country still trying to develop its economy. And we see corruption thriving at the root of it, something that's supposed to be for the people.
And there are also widespread implications, like the investment climate. You have Total Energies invested a multi-billion-dollar gas plant that has been suspended because of the security situation in Cabo Delgado province. So people will be looking on the outside, and also international creditors and donor agencies, that, okay, how are we sure that if we give this country loans, they will be able to repay their loans or honor their agreement? So a lot of widespread implications for all of what is happening.
And has also affected a rose strain in international relations with Mozambique, because this was a loan given by the UK body. So it's more like, do we still partner with Mozambique when we had this series of corruption cases going on there? And of course, how would the money even be repatriated? Because most times we see corruption cases, we see judgments going on, but at the end we don't get to see the money. And even when we hear the money, somehow we don't see it reflect in the economy of the country.
But the good thing is, former President Gbenga is standing trial, because in the past we've often heard of corruption, but political parties won't have the willpower to. Politicians don't normally have the willpower, or they have this way of treating former leaders with reverence, and they won't want to put them on trial for the whole world to see. They have a way of covering things up. But it's nice to see that they've started the trial, and we'll have more details as the trial proceeds. But from the opening day, I mean, the excuses we hear are just ludicrous.
How could he sat down there on the chair with his son and the other accused, and he gave so much justification. I mean, you begin to question how this money even goes through. I think there should be a check and balance for all this illicit spendings.
There are lots of questions to be asked, but we have the experts with us. Fernando Gonçalves is on standby to join with this conversation. Hello, Fernando. Hello, Fernando.
Hello,
can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Fernando, my question to you is this. We've seen a situation where a former president is standing trial, and we do understand that the terrorists in the northern part of Mozambique have always used corruption as one of the resentments against the central government in Maputo. Does this ongoing trial make President Filipe Nyusi champion against anti-corruption, and how does it help in the general fight against corruption in Mozambique?
Well, on the surface, that's how it looks like, but in reality, it's not something that you can say that the president is a champion of fighting against corruption, because his name has come up quite often during this trial as one of those who were responsible for the project and for contracting the loans from Credit Suisse and VTB Capital. So it's not quite clear what his role was, and it seems like the judge is very unwilling to get President Nyusi brought to court, at least as a witness. So it's not, you cannot say categorically that President Nyusi.
In what capacity? Sorry to interrupt you, Gonsalves. In what capacity has he been mentioned or implicated in this testimony?
I
Well,
mean, aside from the part that he was a former defense minister then.
Was defense minister. There was a structure where you had the joint command, which was headed by the president and commander-in-chief, and then there was the operational command, which was headed by him. And according to the witnesses and the various statements that have been made, a lot of the operational aspects of the projects were dealt with at the level of the operational operational command, of which he was the head. So it's very difficult to, at this moment, without him being heard by the court, to say exactly what has happened. Of course, the political responsibility lies with the former head of state, because he was the head of state, he was the commander-in-chief. So he should have an overall oversight of the entire process. But still, there are some doubts still lingering around about the role of the current president.
Okay, we still have Martin Macondzo with us discussing the issues of the tuna bond scandal going on in Mozambique. So, Martin, if you can hear me clearly, do you feel there's enough transparency in bank-to-state credit facilities agreement? Okay, we're still trying to get in touch with Martin. So back to you, Fernando. Do you feel that there is enough transparency in bank-to-state credit facilities agreements?
Well, I think the way these loans were arranged is very unusual, and it has come out that there were people, there were bank officials, Credit Suisse bank officials, who were involved in the scandal, and they knew what was going on, and they wanted to make money. So that's how they allowed these loans to proceed. Because in conventional terms, given the economic situation of Mozambique and the financial position of Mozambique, Mozambique was not even eligible for these loans. The fact that they were able to get these loans was because there was an arrangement both within the Credit Suisse and at the level of the private investor, which was the supplier company.
Okay, Fernando, Manuel Chang, you talked about Gbenga, also talked about Philip, and you say the president being involved. We also know of Manuel Chang, who was the former finance minister, and he was accused of he was being accused as signing the loans about 8 years ago. He has been in detention in South Africa for about since December 2018. What are the worry about Manuel Chang at this point in time, and how big of a role did he play?
I believe we have connection issues with Fernando, but this...
Chang proceeded without government as finance minister was to so he signed these guarantees. Now the question here is, would he have signed these guarantees without a higher authority? And we are talking about $2.2 billion US dollars.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
13%, which is about 13% of Mozambique's GDP. So a minister of finance would not have authorized. I mean, it's very unlikely that he would have authorized those loans or those guarantees or the guarantees for those loans without a higher authority. So I think there is a lot more that needs to be unearthed than just what has come out of this trial.
Okay, Fernando, before we wrap things up, what are the feelers on the ground in Mozambique? What do ordinary people feel about this massive corruption scandal?
People are very suspicious of this trial. They don't trust it. They think it's a show because they think that the government was not even willing to have this trial go ahead, but they had to be. They were under pressure from the international community, from the donor community, which withheld the budget support, direct budget support funds, and therefore they had to do something. Even the audit that was conducted by a company called Kroll was really done under pressure from international donors because they had withheld funds for the government. So people are very suspicious. They are not happy. They feel that they're not getting to the bottom of the story.
Thank you very much, Fernando.
Well, we'll wait to see how this all pans out. And of course, we do hope that justice is served. A lot of Mozambicans, of course, will want a lot of better economic development in Mozambique. Thank you so much, Fernando Gonzalez, for your insight on this big corruption scandal. We also like to thank Martin Macondzo, who joined us earlier to discuss more insight on the corruption scandal in Mozambique.
I mean, that's not all. A lot will still happen, and we'll definitely keep our eyes on the situation there, and also follow up on pronouncements from the European Union Summit.
Well, that's where we'll call it a wrap on today's edition of The Conversation. I am Rita Omodia, same time next week.
And I'm Gbenga Aborowa. See you on Monday.